then warring armies would face one another, and again the bloody melee in Japan's history would begin. However, modern Kendo has adapted the idea of using the live blade from kenjutsu into its kata, or formal exercises. Now, there are 10 of these formal exercises, or kata, in modern Kendo. They are, in fact, all derived from actual kenjutsu techniques, or kata. Now we have practitioners facing one another, finishing up a kenjutsu kata. In fact, the oldest known, still existing kenjutsu style practiced in Japan is known as the Katori Shinto-ryu. This particular school uses many different types of weapon as well as the sword, or the katana. There's much ritual involved with the practice of the sword. Many ideas of etiquette are all part of the samurai's behavior pattern, if you will. There was once a practice known as saya ate. If you were to bang another person's saya, allowing your scabbard to crash into his, it was in effect a challenge. It was a breach of etiquette, which often ended in the death of one of the samurai. The modern kata of Kendo also use 3 kata with what is known as the kodachi. The kodachi is a short sword, similar to the wakizashi, although it is known as the kodachi in the Kendo kata. And this brings into play the tactics and the methods of using this short sword in close combat. Now, oftentimes inside a castle or another samurai's house, the swords were checked at the door so that the long sword, the odachi, as it's also referred to, was not available to a samurai to defend himself. So all he was allowed to carry was the wakizashi, or the short sword. And of course the idea was to get inside the opponent's weapon. If the opponent had a long sword, to get inside his weapon, trap his long sword, thus depriving him of the advantage of the range of the long sword and allowing one with a short sword to be on top, so to speak. Now, the whole idea of the sword, of course, embraces the entire fighting spirit of old Japan. In fact, the sword is a symbol of the power of the emperor, the courage of the samurai, and also the chief weapon used to fight among warring samurai factions for the control of the rice field. Now, the chief idea, or way the samurai sword or katana is used, is in a slicing motion. In fact, the curvature of the blade is what actually uses the mechanics of the blade, if you will, to produce a slicing effect. This, in fact, will cut off or hack off limbs in a mere fraction of a second. A rather formidable weapon in anyone's hands. A 3-foot razor blade. And there were many tactics evolved in evasion of another person's blow, with no actual blocking action, but just cutting down, literally slicing a man in half. Again, avoidance of an opponent's blow by just merely taisabake, or stepping out of the way with no actual block, was a high level of swordsmanship. Why, if one doesn't have time to take time to block, his technique or his counter is twice as fast. A very stylized movement, in the use of the blade. Here we see a defense against ski, the thrust, and then pressing back to dominate the opponent, pushing his will down, both physically and mentally. Again, the formality, the ritual of the Japanese martial arts is reflected in these Kendo kata. Here we have waki no kamae, two swords crashing down from the Ito Ryu kenjutsu system. Suriage blocking, resulting in slicing off the opponent's head. In modern Kendo, there is emphasis on striking to the head rather than cutting the neck, as in kenjutsu. A minor difference. Again, avoiding the opponent's strike and cutting to the head. Itoku no itokumae is the Japanese representation for the amount of appropriate distance between two swords, or two swordsmen. When that distance is achieved, that is when one must attack or leave.